Today we're going to talk about Green World Tours and the journey. Green World Tours is a programme of charitable and responsible tourism-based shore experiences, which is designed to give something back to some of the towns and communities that are featured in our itineraries. Our goal is threefold: to provide our passengers and guests with a unique experience in the countries we visit, to help the local communities, towns and the environment, and also to showcase ourselves as a company wishing to make a real and positive contribution to the local areas our ships call at. There are two different types of Green World Tour on offer. There's worthy cause tours, which are the ones we're going to discuss today, which includes the charity SOS Children's Villages and the orphanages, and also tours with a hint of green. Those ones are like our regular shore excursions, but they have a kind of a sustainable green eco element to them. For example, we visit a green school in Bali, a geothermal plant in Reykjavik, Cats and Dogs Rescue Centre in Koh Samui, and a Sea Turtle Conservation Centre in Lam Shabang, just to name a few of those. So where did it all begin? Well, quite a few of our Green World Tours are concentrated on children, and in particular the SOS Children's Villages. This focus has probably come from the fact that I have a 2-year-old daughter called Savannah. This is her on our honeymoon cruise. Don't ask, she insisted on coming. I was actually disgusted with the fact that we weren't married in the first place. Since having her, even though many things in my life are far from perfect, I've become very aware of how lucky I am to live in the society I live in and have the things I have, such as a roof over my head, food and an income. It's made me very thankful of what I have and very aware of how much my daughter has in relation to other children around the world that have so little through no fault of their own. Okay, so let me introduce you to John. John has a very different story. He looks happy and settled in this photo, but John is an orphan. His parents died when he was 3, and his uncle took him in. But unfortunately his uncle put him straight to work on his farm and herd of cows, and he had to walk miles and miles across plains every day to seek out grazing for them. John was never given any clothes and barely given enough food and water to survive on. John was only 3 when he was practically enslaved by his uncle and had to go through his very, very unnatural start in life. After 3 years of doing this for his uncle and not enjoying the freedoms of a regular toddler, John was found on the side of the road on Easter Sunday 2005. He was suffering from extreme malnourishment and was barely clothed. Practically, unfortunately, John was dying. The lady that found John took him to the SOS Children's Village, and after several visits to John's uncle, he decided the best place for John was in the SOS Children's Village, where he could enjoy the freedoms of a regular toddler. John now lives in the SOS Children's Village with his 7 SOS brothers and sisters and his SOS mother Rose, so he has a very, very different life to the ones of his earlier years. This very, very simple reality, coupled with the fact that I'm going to be hitting 40 years old in October and probably going through some sort of midlife charity guilt crisis, has driven me to try and help some children and some of the people in some of the ports that we visit through a series of alternative shore excursions which by the name Green World Tours. So, along the journey of creating these tours, as you do with any projects, I came across many challenges, but also a lot of help and support, with which I'd like now to acknowledge these people by awarding them the much sought-after title of Friends of Green World Tours. My mother always told me to big up the boss, so whenever you can. So in this case, I'm going to score a hat-trick as I introduce the 3 Davids as official friends of Green World Tours. Messrs. Dingle, Strawford and Pickett gave nothing but support and encouragement for this project from the offset, and I wouldn't be standing here reporting of these successes if it wasn't for those gentlemen today. So there we go, that's the creeping out of the way. Now on to the rest. Edwina Curry. Edwina Curry is a friend of Green World Tours. She attended the very first Green World Tour on the 15th of November 2010, and she loved the experience, so she is officially a friend. Damon Orban, creator of the animated supergroup Gorillas. He inspired the name of the project from the group's second album Demon Days, the track number 4, entitled Oh Green World. They call it insights, I'm just giving you an insight. Okay, next up, the PR team. Captain Greybeard and the Daily Mirror, as well as the Daily Telegraph. The PR team are friends of Green World Tours. They sent out over 250 press releases to over 250 local trade and national publications to raise awareness about this project, and we now have 4 pages of Google results where before we had none, so officially friends of PR team. Very important one next, the onboard tour manager teams. Only one Green World Tour was actually brochured due to this idea hitting full swing after I completed the all-important revenue drivers of the World Cruise. So these guys had to do a lot of promotion and selling on board in order to get the awareness and the minimum numbers for these tours. They did this by sending out flyers, using the port talks, appearing on the ship's TV channel, making announcements, recruiting the assistance of the ship's company, and making presentations in front of the, before the production show in front of all the passengers in one case. With the added pressure of me constantly harassing them, they delivered, and I wholeheartedly thank them for that. Okay, so many of the Green World Tours are concentrated upon children, and in particular the SOS Children's Villages around the world. We've built up a very strong partnership with the organisation, and at this point it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to a very, very good friend of Green World Tours to tell us a little bit more about the SOS Children's Village and what they do and who they help. Caroline Cameron.
Thank you very much, Toby. So far, my involvement in the Green World Tours has taken me from the hilly heights of Cambridge all the way to Southampton, so it's a very enjoyable journey for me so far. Thank you for inviting me here today. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you about SOS Children's Villages. I think it's probably a good idea for me to start by actually asking, I know you've got your mouths full of Cadbury's cream eggs, and you can just raise your hand, who has actually heard of SOS Children's Villages already? Anybody before today? So not that many. Okay, it's always sad to get that sort of response, but this is why it's so valuable to have this opportunity to talk to more people about the charity, so thank you. So to put the work of SOS Children's Villages in context, the fact of the matter is that millions of children around the world are faced with the reality of growing up without a family, without a loving family environment. And SOS Children's vision is that every child should feel part of a family, whatever that family looks like. They should grow up within a family and have love, respect and security. So what we do is we build children's villages, we build families for children in need. And this is one such family. I think this one might be in Montevideo. So the children that we're caring for have been orphaned or abandoned through a variety of reasons. Of course, the reasons are many and vary according to where the children are in the world, but typically it's as a result of poverty, disease, certainly in sub-Saharan Africa. HIV is such a massive problem, and also conflict, and of course natural disaster. We've had so many disasters in the last few years, and each time there's a huge amount of children left unaccompanied, and we're able to help them. So here are just a few examples of some of the children's villages that we have around the world. I've given you a sort of a regional insight. So we've got Europe at the top, Asia, and we've got Africa and Latin America. So a typical children's village is a cluster of family houses. It can vary, maybe 10 to 20 family houses. There's always a nice green space, there's room for the children to play, and in each of the family houses there's one dedicated SOS mother who is raising up to 10 orphan children at a time. So that's quite a commitment. The SOS mothers are the most amazing people. These are people local to the country. They are recruited and trained. The course is very intensive, as you can imagine. Takes 2 years and they become a fully fledged SOS mother. These mothers have to be responsible for a huge family budget, up to 10 children, helping them with their homework and of course just their everyday needs. But of course they also have to be counsellors, because the children that come to our children's villages, as Toby mentioned, John, they come to us as quite traumatised individuals. It takes a while for them to settle in and to bond with the other siblings that they grow up with, but they do so. And if you ever visit a children's village, as many of the friends of the Greenwell tours have, you'll find very happy children. So the children, when they get to about the adolescent age, what happens is they move into a youth home, and this is really important for a couple of reasons. It's a stepping stone towards independence for when they leave the children's village. So the girls will grow up in one and the boys in another, and they'll have a resident supervisor who will help them to begin preparing for adult life and making the important decisions about their future. But of course, this also frees up room in the family house so that more children can grow up in that same family. Because there are, in many parts of the world, poor education facilities, and a lot of children don't even have access to schooling, where there is need, we will build nursery schools, primary schools, secondary schools. The children in our villages go to those schools, but many more children from the wider community, and the priority is for the poorest children in the wider community to attend those schools. So it's education for all, and this can of course really help to break the cycle of marginalisation and of poverty and help equip the children for a brighter future. Vocational training is also very important to equip young people with the skills that they need to become independent and contributing members of their society. Medical centres, we also build these. So what I'm trying to do here is show you the picture of the children's village. It starts with the family houses, but according to need, the children's village will expand to have other services that benefit the whole community, so schools, vocational training centres and medical centres. And an important part of our work in the medical centres is not just treatment for diseases, immunisations and so on, but it's also health education. So it's teaching about, of course, hygiene, about disease prevention and so on. So all really important things to share with the community to help them to help themselves.